India is the cradle of the human race, the birthplace of human speech, the mother of history, the grandmother of legend, and the great grandmother of tradition. With being all of that, it is the fastest growing economy in the world and is in a sweet spot, being the center of attraction of the whole world. The strive of being even more developed led to people's selection of PM Narendra Modi as their Prime Minister, who has been under extreme pressure with his policies and decisions. Any policy or decision is looked upon by each country all over the world, with schemes like Make in India and Digital India being a huge success. PM was under great pressure while he introduced the budget 2017-18. The budget was unique in a number of ways. It was launched a month earlier. Secondly, the budget was consolidated with the financial budget. The railway budget was consolidated with the financial budget, and moreover, the distinction between planned and non-planned outlays was done away with. Also, the GST and the demonetization policies had an effect on this budget. The budget has a lot more things involved, which is why we have presented this presentation.
The main contents of this PPT are about the budget, the various taxes and the tax slabs, the three major forces of the government, that are demonetization, GST, and of course the digitalization slogan of today's India. Various sectors of economy like rural, infrastructure, health, defense, and the fiscal deficit, and many more. Now, what is a budget? A government budget is a government document presenting the government's proposed revenues and its spending, that is expenditure, for a particular financial year, that is often passed by the legislature, approved by the chief executive or the president, and presented by the finance minister to the nation in the parliament. And this time the budget has been presented by our current finance minister, Mr. Arun Jaitley.
Now here are the key figures of the budget. We have taken into account receipts, expenditure, and deficits. Receipts include revenue receipts and capital receipts. Revenue receipts are those receipts which are recurring in nature and are earned in normal course of the business, such as cess, direct income tax slabs, corporate tax, etc. Capital receipts are those receipts which affect the liabilities and assets of the government. Either the liabilities are increased, like borrowings from IMF, World Bank, and on other countries, or the assets are reduced, like disinvestment of the shares. Now here is expenditure. Expenditure is divided into two parts: scheme expenditure or planned expenditure, and expenditure other than scheme or non-planned expenditure. Scheme expenditure is done on the particular schemes run by the government, like Manrega, public distribution system, etc. And non-planned schemes include salaries for the employees, etc. And the total expenditure for this budget is 21,46,735 crore rupees. Now here are the deficits. Revenue deficit is the difference between revenue expenditure and revenue income. Fiscal deficit. It is revenue income plus non-debt capital receipts minus expenditure. And primary deficit, it is the difference between fiscal deficit and interest payment. Now this slide shows the sources of income of the government and areas of expenditure of the government. The main sources of income for our government is corporate tax, borrowings and other liabilities, and direct income tax, and services and other taxes. And the main areas of expenditure of our government is interest payments to different countries and state share of taxes and duties.
As we already discussed, our PM Narendra Modi faced a lot of challenges before this budget. The world economy faced considerable uncertainty. With Mr. Donald Trump being elected as the president of US, there was a Republican approach, as he said that America is only for Americans. The US Federal Reserve is about to increase the policy rates, that is, the interest rates that their banks would be providing to the investors. With the increase in those rates, the amount of FDI coming in India would reduce. So, there would be less investment in developing countries like India. Also, there is uncertainty around commodity prices, especially that of crude oil, as its price has been fluctuating. Also, all those world war issues have been rising just to hike the price of crude oil. There has been also a sign of retreat from globalization of goods, services, and people due to the Republican approach. Demonetization. As we were all sitting, relaxing, and watching TVs in our home on 8 November 2016, Mr. Narendra Modi gave an unprecedented speech which made way for Facebook jokes and WhatsApp memes before making way for some really serious discussions. The tenders of rupees 501,000 lost the legal tender. They were not valid anymore. And all those who had cash in their homes had only two challenges, either to deposit in their bank accounts or to just its value be reduced to zero. And this move will help to curb tax evasion. We would be trying to eliminate corruption and stop terror funding. Black money amounts would reduce and the counterfeiting currency would eventually come down to very low levels. Goods and services tax. This was the landmark achieved by the government when this policy was passed in the parliament. So goods and services tax would lead to abolishing of all indirect taxes. Mr. Arun Jaitley didn't even touch the column of indirect taxes, as only goods and services tax, that is GST, would take over those tax, and it would be the only tax to be applied on goods instead of those indirect taxes, and it is likely to be introduced on 1st July 2017. Public service. Now we discuss what the government has done for the public service. First of all, the government e-market. All the government offices and public sector enterprises offices would now be available to buy things from online. That is online, through online means, so that they do not have to go to the market to buy things of regular use. This would stop corruption, as they took the stationery to homes just using the fake bills. As we all know, to get passports we need to travel to even Amritsar, because we do not have proper passport services in Ferozepur. Also, we have the greatest postal network in the world. So by merging those, the government is planning to use the post offices to render passport services. A centralized defense travel system would be created. That is, for every defense personnel, they would be allowed to book their tickets through online system by just submitting their identity cards or uploading a pictures of it, and would not have to stand in long queues to get their tickets or their concessions on the tickets. Pension disbursement system. Getting pension properly and on time is a difficult task in India. You need to bribe those government officials to do that. But with pension disbursement system, there would be an online tracking system which would track the amount of pension being disbursed to the people. We need to rationalize the number of tribunals and merge tribunals. Like Securities Appellate Tribunal has been merged to handle the problems of both pension systems and insurance schemes.
Next up, we have digital economy. Now, ever since demonetization happened, everyone has realized the importance of cashless transactions, and the government has taken full advantage of this opportunity to promote digital economy. Now, the first step that they've taken is they've reduced the presumptive income tax rate from 8% to 6%. What this means is all the small and medium taxpayers whose turnover is not more than 2 crore, they can include their income as presumptive income, which is now 6%. For example, if a company has a turnover of rupees 1.5 crore in a year, that is less than the limit amount, that is 2 crores, then they only have to pay tax on 6% of their turnover, that is 6% on 1.5 crore, which would be 14 lakhs. Even if the company earns more income than 6%, yet the minimum amount they have to pay would be this. And the second point is pretty self-explanatory, that is, you cannot make any transactions of above rupees 3 lakh in cash. Any transaction above 3 lakh rupees has to be made through non-cash basis like bank checks or electronic fund transfer, etc.
From Planning Commission to Niti Aayog, there is a sea change. And since the beginning of the year 2015, Niti Aayog has become a buzz, at least for India. Everyone's eyes are on Niti Aayog, that how it is going to replace the 65-year-old Planning Commission how Mr. Modi is going to implement and execute his policies regarding Niti Aayog, and many people compare this model of Niti Aayog with the China's urban planning model, and it would be quite interesting to see that how Niti Aayog is going to change the politics. So, Planning Commission. Planning Commission was formulated on 15th March 1950 after independence, when India was a quite poverty-stricken country, and our first Prime Minister, Mr. Jawaharlal Nehru, was also the first chairman of Planning Commission. But unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, it got dissolved on 17th August 2014, and the reason being Niti Aayog. Since it was on January 1, 2015 that an assessment report was submitted to Prime Minister Narendra Modi by the Independent Evaluation Office, which recommended such a change from Planning Commission to some Control Commission, and hence came into existence the Niti Aayog. Niti Aayog. Niti Aayog stands for National Institution for Transforming India. As already discussed, it came into existence on 1 January 2015, and after getting formulated, its first meeting took place on 8th February 2015. And the major point of distinction between Niti Aayog and Planning Commission is in the model of decision making. Since Planning Commission used to follow the top-down model of decision making, which means that the major decisions are taken at the senior level and it is basically strategy based, whereas Niti Aayog is following the bottom up approach of decision making, where all the team members will take the decisions collectively. The decisions will be actually taken at the lowest level and then will pass on to the next higher level till it reaches the highest level for its final approval. Apart from that, Niti Aayog acts as a government think tank. It has been established with the aim to foster involvement and participation in the economic policy making process by the state government, and it will also provide opportunities to represent the economic interest of the state government and the union territories of India. The chairman of Niti Aayog is Mr. Narendra Modi, our current Prime Minister, CEO Mr. Amitabh Kant, Vice Chairman Arvind Panagria, and the ex officio members being Rajnath Singh, the Home Minister, Arun Jaitley, the current Finance Minister, Suresh Prabhu, the current Railway Minister, and Radha Mohan Singh.
Far long we have discussed the uniqueness of budget in various sectors. Now it's time to discuss uniqueness of budget in agriculture and rural sector. So first point of uniqueness is dominancy of investment-led growth over demand-led growth. It gives rise to two basic questions. What is demand-led growth and what is investment-led growth? Demand-led growth is the consumption side, that is when government give tax rebates on commodities, lowering their prices and increasing its demand. Investment-led growth is the supply side, in which government invests in new projects, irrigational projects, agricultural projects, drought-proofing farm projects and many other. Price stabilization fund, as the name suggests, it stabilizes the price of a commodity. Earlier we were having price stabilization fund for only rubber, and now government is soon to launch price stabilization fund for onions and potatoes too. Funding of NABARD. So funding of NABARD has been increased. Because of this reason, NABARD has launched its first time ever project, Green Climate Fund. New fund under NABARD is being established, and it is Dairy Processing and Infrastructure Fund with a corpus of 2,000 crores, and with a time span of 3 years it will be increased to 8,000 crore. Then our budget is farmer friendly budget, as it does a lot for the farmers. So our slide is divided into two parts. First one is that what budget is supposed to do for agriculture and farmers welfare, and other one is what budget is supposed to do for rural sector. So let us see at glance that what budget is supposed to do for farmers. So main aim of budget is to increase income of the farmers, and the first point for this is that government has increased allocation of rupees 10 lakh crore for rural credit. That is, now government will lend 10 trillion loans to farmers, and coverage under Fasal Bima Yojana has been raised to 40%. Fasal Bima Yojana replaces NAIS, National Agriculture Insurance Scheme and modified NAIS. Role of NAIS was to ensure crops for the farmers, but Fasal Bima Yojana have two motives. First one is of course to ensure the crops, and the other one is to stabilize the income of the farmer. Our third point is a step towards green revolution, that is setting up of new mini labs in Krishi Vigyan Kendra. Krishi Vigyan Kendra aims at transferring the innovative ideas invented by agricultural scientists to the farmers so that farmers can enhance the quantity and quality of their produce. Next point is ENAM, that is National Agricultural Market. This is the electronic portal where all APMCs trade, and APMCs are agriculture produce market committees. They do online marketing of farmers' produce so that farmer can get well-defined amount for his produce. Earlier we were having 13 APMCs, and in this budget they have been expanded to 585 APMCs. So Dairy Processing and Infrastructure Development Fund has been set up under NABARD with a corpus of 2000 crores, and with the time span of 3 years it will be increased to 8000 crores. So as we are discussing that this budget is farmer friendly budget, so let's see what is in this budget for farmers. First one is insurance coverage is there under Fasal Bima Yojana, and its corpus have been increased to 40%. There will be new mini labs in Krishi Vigyan Kendras, and 10 trillion of agriculture credit will be given to farmers. APMCs are expanded to 585 under ENAM. So our second sector is rural sector, that what budget is supposed to do for rural sector. So main aim of budget in rural sector is to provide basic employment opportunities and basic infrastructure. First point at grants is allocation for rural agriculture and allied sectors have been increased to 1,87,000 crore, and there's highest ever allocation in Manrega, that is Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, which aims at providing 100 days of employment. Allocation have been increased in Manrega at rupees 48,000 crores, and in earlier budget we were having allocation of 40,000 crores in Manrega. Aim of 100% village electrification will be achieved by 1st May 2018. Use of space technology for planning Manrega works, and priority for piped water supply to open defecation free villages will be there. It's a step towards Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. Participation of women in Manrega has been increased to 55%, and it's a step towards women empowerment. Government will provide short-term crop loans at 3 lakh, and the interest rate will be 7% annually, and there's an incentive for the farmers. Those who do prompt payment within the duration time, they will get 3% incentive, and the interest rate then will be only 4%. Mission Antodaya replaces Ajivika. Mission Antodaya aims at providing skills to the rural people so that they can employ themselves, eliminating the poverty. And for making rural people have skills, we need Gram Panchayats. So Mission Antodaya aims at eliminating poverty and making new Gram Panchayats, that is 50,000 by 2019. So here's what our budget is supposed to do for rural population. First is low cost housing for poor. Yes, of course, budget is supposed to cut the cost of houses, as RERA is going to be implemented soon from 1st May, and Maharashtra has already implemented RERA. Labor friendly reforms will be there, which will help the labor to get appropriate wages in appropriate working conditions, and in appropriate working conditions they will work. Increased allocation for welfare of scheduled castes, scheduled tribes and other backward classes will be there. And as I have told you, Manrega benefits will be there, piped water supply will be there, and better road connectivity will be there.
Now here is the most awaited part of the budget, the tension of every household of India, the direct income tax slabs. This time the people expected it to be a populist budget because of the elections, but the government did it in a different way. And now the tax slab rate for income group of 2.5 lakh to 5 lakh has been reduced from 10% to 5%, and the rebate of 5,000 rupees had been reduced to 2,500 rupees to avoid the duplication of tax benefit. Other subsequent tax slabs will get a benefit of 12,500 rupees. For the first time, income above 50 lakh rupees will have to pay a surcharge of 10%, which will be calculated on the tax. As cess, additional cess of 2% education cess and 1% higher education cess will be levied on the tax. Now here are the different income groups who will be affected after this budget. The person earning 3.5 lakh rupees will get a benefit of 2,575 rupees. A person of income 24 lakh will get a benefit of 12,875 rupees. Only the person having a 60 lakh income will be in loss of near about 1,50,000 rupees due to the surcharge which was not before. The person having 1.1 crore income will have a tax benefit of 14,806 as surcharge has been left undisturbed. Capital gains tax. A capital gains tax is a type of tax levied on capital gains profits an investor realizes when he sells the capital asset for a price that is higher than the purchase price. Capital gains taxes are only triggered when an asset is realized, not while it is held by an investor. To illustrate, an investor can own shares that appreciate every year, but the investor does not incur a capital gains tax on the shares until he sells them. Now here are the capital gains tax rates. It is divided into two parts: short-term capital gains and long-term capital gains. The period of distinction for capital gains other than shares and mutual funds is 3 years. If we sell before the 3 years, it will be considered as short-term capital gains, and after 3 years, it will be considered as long-term capital gains. In case of shares and mutual funds, the distinction period is 1 year. For short-term capital gains other than shares or mutual funds, the income will be added to the direct income of the person and will be levied accordingly. For long-term capital gains other than shares or mutual funds, tax rate is 20% on the profit plus 3% education tax on the tax. Short-term capital gains of shares and equity mutual funds, the tax rate is 15% on the tax and 3% educational cess on the tax. For long-term capital gains of shares and equity mutual funds, there is no tax. Short-term capital gains of debt mutual funds, the income will be added to the person and will be tax will be levied accordingly. For long-term capital gains of debt mutual funds, it will be 20% tax plus 3% education cess after indexation. It means inflation will be adjusted and profit will be taken out of it. Corporate tax. A corporate tax is levied on the companies, maybe domestic or foreign. Earlier it was 30% flat rate, but now it has been reduced to 25%. A surcharge of 5% is levied in case the turnover of a company is more than 1 crore for a specific financial year. 3% education cess is levied. Corporate tax is also levied on the global earnings of the domestic company. This takes into account income earned by the company abroad. Fiscal deficit. A fiscal deficit occurs when a government's total expenditures exceed the revenue that it generates, excluding money from borrowing. Deficit differs from debt, which is an accumulation of yearly deficit. Now, here the data of a fiscal deficit of India for the last decade. Now the fiscal deficit of India is 3.5% and the target is to reduce it to 3% by 2020.
Education is the most powerful tool you can use to change the world, as said by the great Mr. Nelson Mandela. For education sector, the union government has nearly pegged an outlay of rupees 80,000 crores. That amount is increasing year by year, and there has been an increase of 10% from last year, while the budget last year for education was 72,000 crores. Of this, nearly 46,000 crores is being spent for school sector, because if you are at least school graduate or you have done at least your 12th, you can be self-sufficient and can earn your 2 meals a day. UGC, that is the University Grant Commission, will be reformed for higher education. Colleges and institutions will be given more autonomy and would be held accountable for the results. Now we'll see what a Modi government has done for youth and Skill India. First of all, an innovation fund has been created, which has been spent in 3,480 districts, because in India education is only theoretical. To make it more innovative, government will try to provide scholarships who will try to do something new. Swayam platform, which is mainly IT based, will be launched with at least 350 online courses. No matter you are 12th graduate or postgraduate, you can do any course free of cost. A national testing agency will be made to conduct all entrance examinations so that there can be regularity and better management, and there can be no chances of cheating or leaking of examinations. Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Kendras to be extended to more than 600 districts. That is, more and more Kaushal Kendras would be developed so that the Indians can learn international skills so that they can be successful out of their home country as well. Sankalp, that is skill acquisition and knowledge awareness for livelihood promotion program, will be launched at the cost of rupees 4,000 crores. It will provide market relevant training to youth so that only theoretical knowledge is not enough to get you a job. You need much more than that. Also, Strive will be launched at a cost of 2,200 crores, which would make our country a more industry relevant one. A scheme for creating employment in leather and footwear industries will be launched, as the textile industry has been handed over a budget of 6,700 crores, out of which 1,555 crores have been reserved for the tax rebates to the ones who will export their goods to foreign countries, as it would increase the competitiveness of the sector. Tourism alone can nearly create 5% of our GDP if realized properly. So Incredible India 2.0 campaign will be promoted so that tourism can be increased in India. Now we'd like to see what our Modi government has done for the financial sector. Financial sector. FDI policy reforms. So more than 90% of FDI inflows have been automated. They need not engage in those lengthy processes and those tedious paperwork. Shares of public sector enterprises like IRCTC will be listed on stock exchanges. Also, there would be a good mechanism so that the listing of central public sector enterprises is done on time so that they can perform their operations with proper capital. Also, Foreign Investment Promotion Board will be abolished. A computer emergency response team which can handle any queries related to any sector would be formed so that it provides competitiveness to the financial sector worldwide. Also, Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana has a target of 2.44 lakh crores. The biggest revolution has been the Bharat Interface for Money app, that is the BHIM app. It would allow us to send or transfer money from anywhere at any time. The government will introduce two streams, referral bonus for the users and cashback for the traders. The Negotiable Instruments Act might also be amended this time. Also, there is a scheme of direct benefit transfer, as now the government, instead of getting back or refunding the benefit to the companies, would directly benefit the consumers, as the subsidy would be directly transferred to their bank accounts. A good booking system, as discussed earlier, for army and defense personnel, so that there can be easy booking with subsidized rates. For big time offences, which they include the economic offenders fleeing India, the government will introduce legislative change so that all their assets can be taken over and sold over to consolidate the losses that they have paid.
Next we come to infrastructure. Infrastructure is it refers to all the facilities that are necessary for an economy to function. Now this year the government has given a big boost to this sector. It has given a massive 3.9 lakh crore of budget allocation to infrastructure. This is mainly because the railway budget has been included in the infrastructure budget this year. But even if we exclude the railway, we see that last year we had 2.21 lakh crores of expenditure on infrastructure, but this year is 2.41 lakh crores. And the remaining 1.3 lakh crores has been allocated to railways. And they've looked to take full advantage of this massive amount that has been allocated to this sector. Rupees 1 lakh crore has been spent for passenger safety, because last year we've seen several train related incidents which has hurt several people. They've looked to modernize the railway stations. They've looked to increase the construction of railway lines to about 3,500 kilometers. 25 railway stations have been initiated for redevelopment. 500 stations will get lifts and escalators from now on. Also, 7,000 railway stations will be run by solar power from now on to conserve electricity. Several railway coaches will be fitted by bio-toilets, and several customer-based services have been started, such as Clean My Coach and Coach Mitra. Both are used to help the passengers to have a happy Indian railway journey. And lastly, a new metro rail policy has been initiated. Now, as is it for roads, the budget allocation for highways is rupees 64,900 crores.
2,000 kilometers of coastal connectivity roads will also be constructed and developed, and a total of 1.4 lakh kilometer roads are to be built by this year. As it is in airports, select airports in tier 2 cities, that is cities with 50,000 to 90,000 population such as Amritsar, Ludhiana, Jalandhar, these sectors will renovate their airports through PPP mode, that is private public partnership mode. And lastly, we'll come at the rural areas where high-speed broadband internet connectivity will be provided through OFC cables. And through this, the government has initiated a scheme known as DigiGao, which will provide telemedicine, education and skills to people living in the rural areas. Also, several strategic crude reserve oils will be opened up in India to make it more self-dependent regarding its demand for crude oil. Several solar parks will also be developed to achieve an additional of 20,000 megawatts capacity. And India is set to become a global hub for electronic manufacturing. The government has allocated a provision of rupees 745 crores to make sure that India produces more of electronic goods on its own. And lastly, a new structured central scheme for export infrastructure will be launched this year.
Now comes the health sector. Health sector is an important sector of any budget, since a healthy nation only takes to become a wealthy nation. And usually it is seen that the expenditure over health sector in India is less. But this time, what's the expenditure? Let's see. So this time the public expenditure on health sector is around 1.2% of GDP. Still it is less, but a positive aspect of this budget is that there has been a 23% increase in allocation of funds on healthcare as compared to the budget of 2016 to 17. And apart from that, around 27,000 crore rupees have been spent over NHM, that is National Health Mission. And there are plans to issue Aadhaar-based health cards to the senior citizens containing their health details. There are plans to convert around 1.5 lakh health sub-centers into health wellness centers and to start 2 more institutions similar to the IIMS, that is All India Institute of Medical Sciences. There is a program to increase the number of postgraduate seats by 5,000 every year. 3-year specialty courses to be conducted by district and large private hospitals to make easier specialization in DNB, that is Diplomat of National Board, and Mahila Shakti Kendra to be set up at the village level with an allocation of rupees 500 crore in 14 lakh ICTs Anganwadi centers. India has successfully achieved the target of becoming a polio-free nation, a target of the year 2014. But still there is a lot to be achieved in this regard. So some more targets set by the government are to eliminate the communicable diseases like Kala Azar and filariasis by 2017, Kala Azar, an extremely rare disease also known as black fever, and filariasis, which causes swelling and thickening of the skin. Leprosy by 2018, leprosy which causes bumps on skin. Measles by 2020, measles, a viral infection mainly found in small children but can be cured by vaccination. And then the most important, tuberculosis by 2025. Tuberculosis, a quite common infection which affects the lungs. Then regarding IMR and MMR. IMR, that is infant mortality rate, means the rate of deaths of infants under the 1-year-old category per 1,000 live births. And MMR, that is maternal mortality rate, means the rate of female deaths per 1 lakh live births may be because of any cause. And the target is to reduce the infant mortality rate from 39 in 2014 to 28 in 2019, and to reduce the maternal mortality rate from 167 in 2011 to 13 to 100 during 2018 to 20. Then comes the defense sector. The expenditure over defense sector is increasing year after year, but the fact is that it is a totally unproductive sector since the revenue generated is negligible.
Now we'll discuss our budget in a nutshell. Our conclusion: the team which we have created the presentation, we give a final score of 7 out of 10 to this budget. First of all, discussing the negatives, all the investors and economists, with fiscal deficit coming down and the price of crude coming down, expected the total expenditure to be nearly 24 to 25 lakh crores, but it was fixed at 21.5 lakh crores. Second, railway budget. It was merged with the financial budget, which led to decrease in its importance, as you cannot see a sector too importantly when you have 40 sectors to discuss. Also, with increasing FDIs and MNCs in India, the incentives being provided to small industry are reducing. Well, on the positive sides, due stress has been laid in innovation, as we are not only relying on theory-based information. Digitalization. This has been an objective of the Modi government since beginning. They are trying to convert India into a digitalized economy, providing the latest technology everywhere where required. Demonetization. It was a huge step taken by the government, which initially reduced the growth rate but would sooner or longer have a positive effect on our economy, as the notes lost their legal tender and all the fake currency and black marketing could be reduced. And with launch of goods and services tax, there was no indirect tax change in the system, as all indirect taxes were banned and only one central GST would be applied. Skill India. Modi government has been laying due emphasis to develop the skills of India, not because to provide them vocational education and by all other means. The fiscal deficit with reduction in price of crude oils has been decreased to 3.5% with the objective of decreasing it to 3%. And last, we are currently the fastest growing economy in the world with our growth rate nearly 7%. So that was all from our side. Thank you.